Welcome to the Human Design Collective podcast, where we explore this system as a unique map of our potential, from the mundane to the mystical. Today we speak with Chaitanya, who runs the Chaitanya FX Human Design Facebook page, one of the most active on social media. If you take a look, you'll likely learn more about design, see a lot of commentary, and find yourself laughing out loud. We were so curious about the man behind the page and excited to bring his voice to you in today's episode, where we discuss experimenting with the system, emotionality, being a projector, and what happens when we become overly identified with the map. We hope you enjoy the conversation.
Welcome to the podcast, Chaitanya. It's great to have you here. I guess we've talked a couple times, but this is our first time to actually talk voice, and you've been a little bit of a mystery man on social media, and I know you mostly because of your Facebook page and the activity there, the wonderful memes, the human design postings. It injects I think a much needed humor into the collective or into that medium that is, for me, it's very refreshing. I guess I'd like to start by just asking, how did you come to human design? What's your experience been with it to date?
So how did I come into it? Well, I came into it when a friend of mine, sent me an audio lecture of the experiential way. I remember it was like 6 files or something, and I didn't know who it was. So I listened to it, and I'm listening to it. And about halfway through, I'm like, man, this guy really knows. And the reason is, right before that, I've been really studying up on Joseph Campbell and, Hero's Journey and all of this. So this came right after that. So it was like, oh my God, this is just like the hero's journey, and you have the left-handed path and all that. And so it just made sense. And I didn't even know it was Ra Uru Hu or who it was. So I listened to it. I said, hey, do you have any more? And then he sent me another audio clip, and I listened to that. And then I was sort of curious, okay, where do you get this stuff? So then I started searching and all of this, and got some books and started reading. And I didn't get the chart reading till about probably at least a year, maybe 2 years after I got into human design. Then I started reading my own chart, from books. I think I had one of the first books was Chaitanya's book, yeah. Okay. That was how to break down the chart, all the centers and everything. I looked at that. And then, a couple of years later, I got a couple of readings, and, I was fully on after that. So that's how I ran into it, through those audios.
It sounds like there was a lot of self-education as part of your process of study, looking at charts and talking with other people, observing. Is that kind of how it was for you in terms of just really going deeper into the knowledge?
Well, I never really talked to a lot of people. And it's always been sort of a silent project. And even before that, we were in a local ashram here, and which was really a great experience, because it wasn't just to do the ashram stuff, but we studied pretty much everything esoteric there, the old masters and gurus and what they were talking about. And the main teacher there was also really well educated. So it was a very good basing for me. And on the backs of that, I came into human design. And I also have an astro background, that goes way years back. So when all of this came together, it was just a natural. It's like, oh yeah, I have to look at this. And it just rang true. So that's how it got started. And I really didn't start talking to anyone. I normally don't really talk about research. So it was like research at first. So I'm going through, because I had to prove it to myself, right? It's always been that way. So I was just looking for holes, what's this guy talking about? So that's why it took a couple of years even to find an analyst to go and, find somebody to get a reading. So it's about right after that I got on Facebook, just to look for a community, because there was no one here, and I didn't know anyone. And I just wanted to see if there was a presence, and then found these little groups, and that's how it all got started.
The social media Facebook element is something that I wanted to ask you about. With a page like yours, with the amount of activity, and then just the amount of exchange that's happening on Facebook around human design now. What does that look like? What are you seeing out there on Facebook from your point of view? I know a lot of the stuff that's posted is human design related and these memes, and I'm kind of curious, are you creating these memes? And then with your interactions, what's the landscape look like on social media in terms of human design and your perspective?
Well, I think it's our gathering space, right? It's like the human design nation because we're all over the place, all fragmented, all walks of life, and there's no common ground. So I think these groups give a good place to meet up and talk and exchange ideas and opinions and ask questions. Well, maybe in big cities like LA or New York, you can have group meetings, right? Meetups. But I think we don't have those kinds of numbers. I don't think even yet. I mean, imagine on a platform like that, you can get a couple thousand people on one page and just talk about pretty much anything human design and different life experiences and everyone's point of view. I think it's amazing. To me, it's like a buffet of ideas, right? From different people, perspectives.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, it really does strike me as pretty incredible. It's almost like it goes hand in hand with maybe the technological aspects of this system. You need modern technology to run a chart, for example. You need software to program. And now we have this stage of human evolution. We have this ability to connect with people around the world and the globe, and to have these type of exchanges and these groups come together. Just going back 20 years, none of that's really possible, or it wouldn't be possible on the same scale. It seems like it may just be part of the evolution of the program and where we're heading, where we're going.
I think so. And I think Ross saw that early on. He was pretty big on Facebook, and he thought it was a good way to reach people. And it is. I think it'll just unfold naturally. Open access, right? Free access, level playing field. Everybody has equal say so. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I'm not sure how it's going to evolve, long as people are willing to participate. Seems like a lot of new people go there just to find out what's going on first. And then as you get grounded in it, as you get grounded in it, then people tend to move away and go back into their own lives. You don't see them too often. And I used to think, wow, it'd be nice to have sort of a old group of people there that have been around for 20 years, and just have a group of those as sort of the elders and be able to ask questions. But I don't think that's the way the social media platforms are sort of taking shape. It's really more for all the new people to come in, take a bite, find out what's going on, and then they go on their way. There's a big rotation, right? There's very few people that hang around for years. It's sort of watering hole, I think, on their way.
Yeah.
Seems like it. So
it's interesting to think about how much of an online exchange there can be, and that it does seem like there are new groups coming online all the time on Facebook, and like you said, it does seem like the place where people go initially. How's the experience for you in your personal life? I'm curious about just how human design has affected your daily life, maybe in your offline experience.
Offline. Well,
is there offline anymore? I mean, not in today's world, but
yeah, there is. I mean, it's amazing because people think, you just sit there, post all day. It's really because I'm working. So I'm DLR, right? So I need to be in a relaxed state all the time. Mm-hmm. And normally trading's hardly relaxing. It's like the most intense type of work you can do. It's like being an air traffic controller. So what I do is I do other things in between. I might play an online game. I might read a little bit. I might watch something. And the memes you were asking about, I make my own memes. The human design ones. Right. There's a lot of them. If I see something, I'll save it and post it later. So I do a lot of different things to just stay relaxed and not get sort of hypnotized by the markets and charts, because I do a lot of technical work and lines and graphs and this and that. So just to clear up the online part, it's just really started as something to relax and just defocus. And then I refocus and I defocus, right? So that's how it got started. As far as offline, well, it's great. It's, how has human design impacted me? Well, gosh, it's changed everything. I mean, that's a big topic. Do you want to ask me something specific? Because how has it affected me? Well, it's affected practically everything, from changing my PHS was a huge thing. And I did it probably 2 or 3 years into the experiment. So, I stopped eating meals basically after dark, but then it eventually ended up after lunch. And now it's really around noon or 2 o'clock, I'm done for the whole day.
Wow.
And it's been amazing, right? Because I get up around 4:30 or 5 o'clock because I have to get ready for work. And you get up, you're sharp. So just the pH has been unbelievable. And keeping healthy and fit and everything. So that part is very grounding. Other than that, well, just to contrast, I would say I've been sort of lucky in the sense that, just through the school of hard knocks, I figured out early on some of these things about imitations and waiting, and also, emotional decision making. Over time, probably, it just came like, well, if I rush into this is what happens. So I'm just going to lay back. About waiting for invitation and recognition, those kind of came over time. Like out of actually going to college and even a little bit after, I got into sales and I had a business and advertising company and all of this. So I was in sales a lot. So, and studied psychology and all this stuff to help support, basically running a business. So I picked up early on all of these little cues, being a projector probably. So by the time I sort of came into human design and when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's true. So it's validating a lot of things. But before, even though I knew it, I wasn't executing it 100% efficiency, so to speak, right? It was just, depends. But after after you got it, it's like, oh yeah, this is it. And that was it. It's been amazing since then, because what happens is you get all this extra free time in your mind.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Because you don't have to think about so much. You don't have to think about anything at all. So the biggest change is that freedom, right? Freedom it gives you. You don't have to plan so much. I'm talking about how your personal life should unfold, not task-wise, in your business or whatnot. So, you just sort of go with the flow. And so I would say the biggest change has been sort of that trust that comes in. Like, it's okay. Like, I don't have to worry about anything. To me, boy, I tell you, I couldn't be any more thankful to Ra and the voice and everything else, anything else that's around, because you can't buy that. There's no price tag on that.
Yeah.
You can't earn it. It just, if the two meet together and you get it, you're lucky, right? That's it. There's no beating around that. And because you can't fake that either, right? You can't fake, you might be able to fake kind of being spiritual and whatnot, being nice and all of this stuff, but you really can't fake the inner peace. Yeah. Because you have to live with that. You can't control that. It's either there or it's not. Yes. And so I learned some of that during the ashram period. A lot of that is really forcing to be a certain way, trying to fit this category, right? Being spiritual or
right,
sort of this predefined persona. So Ra basically handed it to you. This is how you do it. And it just happens. And then, gosh, you can't be anything other than grateful.
Yeah. Amy and I were actually just talking about that a little while earlier. I mean, just what a gift for those who it resonates with and it's the right time, place, or it clicks. Human design is just the biggest gift I think I've ever been given. And as a projector as well, just realizing what it meant to be a projector, really even in a general sense, before I got down into determination or PHS or anything like that, that was a huge wake-up call or realization for me, and to the point of like looking back and going, wow, I can't believe I've been on this planet that long not knowing this or not having this as a point of reference. I ultimately thought that there was just something wrong with me. Like, okay, there's something wrong or different or broken about you, compared to the majority of what I see out there in the world. And it was just a huge relief. And was it for you learning about being a projector or what that meant as, an energetic type? Was it a similar thing or did it resonate?
The not self projector resonate, just the information.
Just having an understanding that, for me, it was like I was trying to figure out why I couldn't do what everyone else was doing. I didn't have the energy the other people did, or I had a different type of focus, or I operated in a different way. And it was really human design as kind of the first thing I came across, whether it was an esoteric system or metaphysical system or a modern medical approach that said, there's actually nothing wrong with you fundamentally. You're just not living correctly, or you're not designed to operate this way. And then that kicked off this deconditioning process that, I'm obviously still working in, but it was just such a big thing just to even understand what that meant. The fact that I had this different type that only 22% roughly of the population has. And it was kind of like a missing puzzle piece that just explained a lot that I hadn't been able to understand or really work out elsewhere.
Yeah, mine takes a little different, probably because of my background. And I know a lot of projectors suffer, and, gosh, I have enough friends that have gone through things. But for me, first of all, the energy thing was never an issue. I was in a lot of sports. I never thought I got tired. Probably because, first of all, I have 3 motors, so that's one. And probably because I'm left angle, I'm always hanging out with people. So there was always some generator or MG or somebody hanging around with me, so hooking me up. So energy-wise, gosh, no, I mean, that I didn't even think was an issue. Maybe later, as I got older, I would think like, wow, I'm a little tired now. But all the pre-Saturn return years were all amped up, right? Basically being a manifester, because it's very easy to hook me up to be a manifester. Mm-hmm. So when I'm looking back, most of my horror stories are projector trying to be a manifester, mainly that affected relationships, mainly not intimate ones, but all relationships. Could I be too abrasive, too aggressive, just too go? And now looking back, it's like, oh my God, it's so easy to see what happened. It was really me being a super manifester is what it was. But far as having sort of the normal projected trauma, I think I always felt like you can talk to somebody one-on-one, you can pick stuff up very quickly. And I just thought, everybody could do that. I didn't think it was any big deal. And a lot of these projected traits, before HD, I always took it for granted, like, everybody can do that. Everybody probably sees that. Mm-hmm. So I didn't think anything of it. But far as, am I different? I can't do that or whatnot. I think some of that is my mom's conditioning. All I can remember telling me, you're great. You can do anything you want. You're the best. Perfect for a 5'1", right? Perfect mom. So she would just pump me up. There's like, you can do anything you want. You're amazing. Just all these positive stuff. And that's all I remember from her. Very positive. You can do it. This kind of very encouraging language. If anything, it was my dad that was like, what are you talking about? You can't do that. Just try to do this. Or he was always like trying to be very secure, right? Mm-hmm. And my mom is the opposite, like, go do whatever you want, be free, and you can do it, you can handle it. And so that's kind of the background. So I think because of that, I always had that mentality, like nobody could like put me down, because I would always think like, no, they're the stupid ones, not me. Just by through conditioning. It never even came to any kind of a traumatic. If anything, I probably caused more trauma for other people, than for myself, right? Just by acting like a manifester. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think looking back, it was really I can definitely see whether or not 12 facet characters would come out, like characteristics would come out.
Yeah, and I think it also, what you're saying kind of points to how different we can be, even in the same type of all the variations of types of projectors. You have a motorized projector, 3 motors, versus like Amy, for example, a mental projector. There are these common themes or common patterns that we'll see across individuals of the same type, but there's probably more differentiation than anything as well. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting to hear your story and how different it is, as you're having a totally different design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even among, I have two boys, 2 sons, and they're both projectors. So it's been really interesting watching them. I mean, I sort of got into it. Found human design when they were young. My youngest one was only about 3, I think. So I was able to put it to work right away. And it's amazing to see, because everything that we learn on the technical side, when you put the practical use, you can see it. It's true. How the kids are responding and how they're behaving. And I mean, one's a 2-4. They're both emotional projectors, and one's a 2-4 and the other one's a 6-3. Very different,
Yeah. I really love what you said about how whatever recognition you found in this system, as well as in your other spiritual practices or studies, that there's something in all of that it sounds like deepened your sense of just trust in life. And you were mentioning that kind of freeing up a certain amount of headspace, or bringing a certain amount of peace, that you can just relax. There are certain things you don't have to be filled up trying to figure out or worried about or have inner conflict about, once you have that kind of recognition, trust in life. And it also makes me think of, as I was looking through some of your Facebook posts, it was so fun. I was just laughing out loud, the whole time while I was looking through, which I think is probably the experience a lot of people have on your page and why they love it so much. But what I feel from you, even in this conversation, is there's this kind of lightness about you and sort of humor about all of this. And I'm curious about where that comes from for you, because there's a lot of emotional definition in your design. There could certainly be a lot of emotional intensity, I imagine. And yet there's also just the way your frequency comes across, both on Facebook and in conversation. There's just such a lightness. Has that humor always been a part of your life, or is that something that's deepened as you've gotten deeper into the joke of all of this, or where does it come from?
Well, I think the joke started early. Yeah. So it's always been a part, I would say. Mm-hmm. Just probably how I grew up, friends around, and it was never serious. Yeah, it's always been around. I don't even realize it as something that's different, or even would stand out. It's just been a part of everything. Yeah, the likeness, I think I understand it. And a lot of the times I get accused of it, like, you're not serious enough, you got to be more serious about this and that. So there's two sides to it, not being too serious and, little too humorous or too light-handed about everything. I think there's a balance, and, you have to find your practical balance that serves you. Mm-hmm. And, you have to be serious when you have to be. And I don't think you have to be silly all the time, but, either you're serious when you have to be serious things. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the time you don't have to be, and it also depends on the environment and whatnot. But I think it's just a natural thing. It might have to do with in my astro chart, I have a Venus Mars sextile. So normally when you have that, it's, those characters kind of come, it's very smooth, and they're kind of light. They can, get through a lot of stuff without fuss. Mm-hmm. So it might be that that's the only thing I can technically think of as far as the lightness goes.
Yeah, I sometimes associate it with a fifth line thing too. I find that in myself. Or part of the way that the heretic comes out of me as the fifth line is that when things get intense, there's just something in me that wants to kind of, I don't know, make a joke about it, or get a little bit heretical when things get really heavy.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's all kinds of survival mechanisms, right? To keep us sane. And I would say, hey, whatever works, as long as it's working for you. Yeah. No, what I have is a Mercury-Venus conjunction. So that's what really helps get through the conversations without a whole lot of fuss, I think. Mm-hmm. And keep it light at the same time, right? Yeah. And yeah. You said something about the space, about the emptiness.
Yeah, I think just about the space that you were mentioning, being able to have, and maybe also a relaxation that comes when you have a certain trust in life.
I think that's the gift. I think all of this human design business and all of this, if that's not the end goal, I don't know what is. Yeah. Really, what else could it be possibly? I just can't imagine. Mm-hmm. I think that's at least it's the beginning of that, whatever the gift is, of being able to be in that state. without having to try to be in that state.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't have to anchor yourself. You don't have to do any kind of meditations or music or relaxation tapes. It's just there. You resonate at that level. That's your base frequencies. But the thing is, it's something that just happens. Because I was really watching after the whole ashram experience and everything. I'm very attuned to the internal state. And, and you realize, well, it's not something you can control. But it gets there through that trust, through the process. That's part of the deconditioning and, having that awareness. So that's the thing. Awareness comes in and takes up that space that used to be used for idle thoughts and idle considerations. So then it's like, wow, there's nothing really to do. And I know it sounds crazy when you say that. I hear other people say it and I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but I don't think anybody else is going to relate to that directly, because you have to kind of be there. And you hear these, some of these gurus talking about quiet mind and peace and whatnot and how you can get there. So that's the thing. I don't think you can get there. I think you follow your process and it just happens somewhere down the road, because you have no choice in that. And it doesn't matter if you're standing on your head or eating vegan or, whatever you're trying to do to sort of pave the way. I don't think it matters. What matters is that you clear up all the conditioning and you're aligned with your form and you're allowing the form to be, without trying to manipulate it or trying to ride it. And at that point, you fall into your base frequency, which is sort of that peaceful observation sort of level. I would say that's the best thing. I was just thinking the other day, like that has to be the best thing. Looking back, right? Maybe there are better things in the future, who knows? But looking back, it's the best thing so far.
It's actually bringing up something interesting for me that I've been looking at lately, and it's related to astrology. You'd mentioned your birth chart earlier. I believe your sun is in gate 23. That's Taurus, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there's this idea or thing I've been kind of looking at, which is that certain quality of Taurus, which you could almost consider Taoist in nature, this resonance with or alignment with the natural rhythms of life or the earth, as an earth sign. And Taurians are often talked about as being slow or something, and I don't know that it's actually that. I think it's more that there's an attunement and kind of a receptivity there to the natural rhythms and order of things. And I wanted to ask you about that, both in terms of your own experience, but also looking out in the world and seeing some of the extremes in the world at this time and how to come back to a more natural balance of things. Do you have a sense of kind of where I'm going with this, or?
I don't know. I might. Maybe not.
I'll say a few more things. So
go ahead.
It's almost like human design is, if you were to associate it with an older philosophy, it would be probably closest to Taoism from my point of view, and just the natural order, timing, rhythm of things, the diversity of life. But then when you look out into the world, I see people who just want more. We're going to a lot of what appear to me kind of extremes that are out of the natural order of things. People wanting more money or wanting more than they actually need, or thinking like, the projector signature of success of, well, that means I'm going to get rich or something, or people want to get rich. And I think more and more it's really just about having what you need and having enough, and that in itself kind of keeps things in a more natural balance or order. So what comes up for you when you hear that?
Well, that's exactly right. I think that's correct. And the way I see that being correct is, well, the Taoist, Wu Wei is basically effortless action, right? Mm-hmm. And once you're aligned and you're correct in your actions, it's effortless. So I think it's the same thing. It's the way you're grounded and you fall right into effortless action without really having to try. So that being said, all the running around for material gain, well, it's the cycle we're in and the not self world. So yeah, we're going to run around and looking for material things and security. I think that's normal. I think that is natural. I think that is a natural thing, because anything outside of that wouldn't be, because everybody else will have to adapt to some pre-designed sort of a ideal. So all the things we're manifesting and all of these other things is because of lack of understanding of the self. You know, and Ra talked about this a lot about, you know, you have to know your place first. You know, you have to know your place. Once you understand your place, you're fine with whatever you're getting, because you know that's your place and it's your life. You get what you get. And getting is not even an issue, because you're too busy looking at life because now you can actually see. So, you know, that combination has to sort of dial in, sort of like a, you know, fine tuning. You know, all of those factors have to be there, and they all kind of sort of come in together, and then everything is okay. And until you can dial that in, you know, insecurities are there, security issues are there. What about the future? What about the past? Am I going to have enough? You know, the regular, normal things. And then you get the pressure, conditioned pressure to make more, do more, you know, have more. So, yeah, then you end up back in the rat race, which, you know, we've made that to be the norm now. So that's the normal. Yeah, right. We have to understand we're like less than 1%, really, the people that are studying, at least in the experiment. So I think the way to get around all of that would be just to be correct and get deconditioned and sort of get aligned with your own self and see where life takes you. And that's where the appreciation should be, you know, because we don't know. I think it's amazing the places you could go that you never even imagined, and the people you'll meet that you never would have even dreamt of. That's another thing that happened. You know, I ended up meeting people and being friends with people, and before human design, I would, you know, always judge, like, what kind of character is this? You know, does he have this? Does he have that? Is he like that? Is he intelligent? I think everybody has sort of a checklist, you know. But all of that sort of fell away, and, you know, friends of friends, you know, those who resonate, and the others don't. And the ones that do, oh my God, the stuff they bring to you, they tell you, they share with you. I think that's the whole, you know, that's a whole nother department, but universe talks to you through your fractal, and fractal could be your gardener, you know, the guy that you buy the vegetables from, and they'll just, or your friends you hang out with that you wouldn't have in your past life, so to speak. And they'll tell you things, and if you really are paying attention in something they say, it would help you with something else later down the road. So there's these messengers all over the place. So this is why you have to be in the right place. You know, everybody's like, where are my people? Where are my friends? You know, there's no support. Well, you're not in the right place. Support is everywhere. They're lined up just like on a marathon. You know, they're all there with glasses. But you got to be on the right track. If you're running like 1 block away from the marathon, you're missing the whole thing. So that's what I feel. That's what I've seen. And not just in my life, but other people that are sort of been in the experiment and really trying to follow through their form, right, and through their mind. Yeah. And even my kids, they, you know, it's crazy how simple it can be if you just trust it. You know, trust the place you're going to be in. It's okay. Yeah. There's only a few things you can do that you have some control over, and one of those is just being able to trust. You know, say, it's okay, let me just do it one time. You can do it. And then you do it one more time. So there has to be some inspiration, obviously, to do this. That's why I really, you know, I said, look, you know, if you're going to get this, it's luck. And in the old days, you know, like in terms of enlightenment, they used to say, well, it's grace. You know, you can do everything, but there has to be God's grace. Otherwise, you're not. So, you know, I think when Ra said luck, it's pretty much the same thing. You know, without grace, you're not going to get there. It doesn't matter. You can dig tunnels. You can do whatever you want to do. And I don't know what the magic thing is. You know, it's a mutative action. So you hope something happens, but there are no guarantees. But I think there is, if you really trust. I mean, trust is life can take you all the way to the edge and even push you a little bit, and maybe even let you fall a little, but then catch you. And you still have to be able to trust. I've been in those places. So, and I have an open spleen, so I can tell you, you know, this whole thing about fear of life, you know, of things happening or not having enough or this or that. These kinds of things always, you know, they haunt all open spleen people. So So being able to get pushed into that, so the abyss of that open spleen, and say, you know what, this is okay. Now, once you can do that, you're free, man. I'm, at least for myself, because that was my big area, was not self area, was a spleen that kept a lot of that tightness. A lot of that fear was there. Everything else is okay. It's just this little splenic thing that you can't really understand, but it kind of triggers all kinds of things. And spleen has a connection to the mind. So, it's a tricky little circuit. So once you can sort of face it and understand, like, hey, it's okay. This is not threatening. It's not threatening. It's okay. And once that clicks in, you're okay. Then I think, then you can trust you can't go any further than that, right? That's the furthest you can push the fear to see if there's anything wrong. So after that, you pull back and it's okay. Stop me anytime.
We've got quite a
crazy thunderstorm. Can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it.
It's massive. It's like rattling the house right now.
I guess
which is great, because normally, it's rainy season here. So normally we get that in the afternoon, but today is nice and sunny and it's very nice afternoon.
It's
I can see I can hear it.
Open spleen. It's I have an open spleen. Amy's got an open spleen. My understanding of the process of the open spleen is that it's learning through experience. It's learning through seeing, exchange with the world. It's kind of this adaptive immune system and learning what's actually a valid concern, a valid fear. And when you look out into the world now, either whether on social media or the media or what we're seeing out in the world, I'm seeing more fear than I've ever seen in my entire life. It feels like one of the biggest conditioning influences that's coming in, or the homogenizing influences, is around fear and survival and well-being. And would you mind just sharing your point of view on that in terms of what you're seeing through that open spleen right now, having gone through a deconditioning process around that?
Fear's been around forever, and it's just our ability to drum it up. And with mass media and all these connections we have now, it's easy to just drum up fear at a click. And sort of like when we saw 9/11 and the buildings fall, right? And the whole wave went through the planet, or at least the US, and you can feel it. So I just think we're more exposed to things that trigger fear, because everybody has a cell phone. Everybody's looking at this and that in the videos and hearing the news, and those that are not connected are just fine. They're not that. I have friends that are not connected, and there are friends that are connected, watching this and that in world events. And people that are not connected, they're just completely clueless, and they're going about their life just great. And especially here, I have a lot of friends here that are doing their own thing, and they have no fear of anything, not even having any idea what's happening. Again, it's a matter of how are you being informed, and how are you being told about this. Given the not safe world, I don't think it's a big surprise, because what else do we have for a fallback? Love, it's always fear. So, and anger and all of the not self themes are there, just to be pushed at like a buttons. And I think the research into psychology has, we've gotten so far. We know everything, how to trigger people and how not to, how to subtly do it. And I think we've, to some degree, weaponized it. We've been using it all over the place forever, and now it's just sort of the norm. So again, Rai's right on the money here. Unless you can make a decision as yourself, forget about it. Where are you going to look around? Where are you going to find it on Facebook? It's so he was right, and I just can't. That's another one of those gems. You better get on this now, because he said it's not going to get any better.
Yeah.
He said there's going to come to a point people are just going to run around, period, not knowing anything what to do.
Yeah.
So I believe that. I think that's true, and we're going to see that now. So those who can sort of get aligned and make decisions correctly for themselves, will end up in the right places with the right people, hopefully, and they'll have their life. We'll all have our lives. It just depends. Is it going to be the correct one?
Yeah.
As yourself versus the one the mind wants you to play around with. So that's the choice. We've had that choice forever. You got introduced to human design. Well, what are you going to do? You have a choice. Either you can test it out and see if it makes sense or not. And that's, again, is grace. So we'll see.
You kind of started to mention it, and I'm curious about this piece you're talking about, just about psychology and the human design perspective on emotions and emotional energy is so profound. I'm curious about your experience as an emotional being, and you mentioned having emotional sons. What is the human design lens on emotions brought to you, or how did that did it shift how you were experiencing yourself emotionally, and how you see your children?
Well, this is another one of those, I'm outside the norm a little bit, because I don't know if you guys probably saw it. I have 2 channels running into my solar plex from the root. So when you have 2 channels running, it normally stabilizes the emotional wave. It's not so spastic, or it doesn't have the extremes. So I didn't know that until I learned about it. So when I first started learning human design, I hear all these emotional people and emotional wave and up and down. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I'm just about as flat as you can be emotionally, really. Most of the time, it's just super flat. Anybody that knows me will tell you, it's just super flat. Yeah, I can be light and laugh and whatnot, but it's very flat as far as the amplitude of the experience goes. Internally, anyway, the external exposing of it, right? The amplitude of it is pretty flat. But I see more of the amplitude in people, obviously people that are open, but just with 1 channel, at least from the root. So one of my children has both, and another one only has 1. So no, they're all pretty tame. I mean, super, very quiet and pretty much a flat line. Although the 6-3 is a little bit more on the emotional side and more expressive, I would say, and also more artistic, and he's more into sculpture and drawing and all these other kinds of artsy things, creative things. I would say he's the one that's more expressive in the emotional sense of anybody here. I haven't had a lot of exposure. All my exposure to emotions come from the outside, the other, either a partner or friends, and partners have always been unhinged emotionally. So that's been really educational. I think you just attract, if you're just sort of flatlining, you're going to attract the opposite, which is complete peaking out the amplitude of emotional expression. So you get the wild side, but you hold you're like the stable one. So you have to kind of be the oak tree and kind of say, okay, well, let everything blow around. And so after a while, it's more entertaining than anything else. To me, it's like, wow, look at this. So it's never been a big threat. I don't have an involvement. I don't get weaved into that. I don't get pulled into emotional anything really, but because I can sit there and watch it and just be, amazed by it. And it is kind of amazing to me, probably because I can't get there. Not like I can't feel. I'm not talking about depth of feeling. I'm talking about depth of expression of emotions, right? And I'm talking about the close to the unhinged level, either way, the upside or the downside. Yeah. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's a great perspective, because there is a lot of information out there about the emotional process being extreme in some way or highly intense. And I can relate what you're saying to I'm thinking now of some other emotionally defined people I know, and that there can be a certain stability just in being able to process emotional energy that comes with emotional definition. And so it's not always necessarily about expressing some kind of extreme or highly intense emotionality.
Yeah, and this bit that you mentioned about having 2 channels from the root to the solar plexus is a stabilizing factor is really interesting to me. I'm not sure that I had ever really heard it put that way, but thinking about it, it does make a type of sense. So it's very interesting to hear you, 1, mention it, and then 2, say that it fits with your experience.
Totally. It's actually, it surprised me at first. Like, wait, why am I not like that? Why am I not like the definitions, or the typical descriptions of it? And once I understood it, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And it's also, for me, I can look at emotions and be able to verbalize, break down the process, than where people just experience it and without being able to explain it. Like my younger son can experience amazing depths of everything, I think, but he's unable to express it in language. So it's the experience, which is really how it should be, where I can actually sort of get to breaking it down and try to get that emotional experience into give it some kind of a description, right? That's worthy of it, which is not easy.
Yeah.
And there are people that can do that really well, some of these, 55s, and I have some friends with, very individual definitions that can, gosh, man, they can just reach in there and levels of emotional depth that, I shudder at. I just can't even sort of get my toe into it. So I think that area is really amazing, the depth you can go and reach and still hold together and bring it back out and express it and explain what they see. It's sort of like exploring deep space where you go into these areas and be able to express it and not just get lost in the narrative or, lose it, right? Lose the thread, but just to write it perfectly where it's supposed to go and be able to talk about it.
So you must find yourself in the position of, or do you, of kind of introducing or sharing human design with people around you, or as you're encountering people, or do you find that you have that experience of kind of bringing it to them if they're open to it?
Well, in the early days, yes.
That's a comment.
Probably the first 4 or 5 years, I think I was very interested in telling people, or at least hinting and bringing it in, all this. Mm-hmm. And I was still under the illusion that, everybody wanted to hear about it. So then later I found, I don't have to say anything because people ask you if it's correct for them. If the connection's correct, they'll ask and it'll happen. Wow. So as soon as I understood that, I forgot about him. And actually, we talked about, well, what about the unplugged life? I hardly think about human design or talk to anybody about it unless the topic comes up from that side, the other side, the other. So I would say after the first 5 years or so, I just really pulled back on purpose not to even bring it up. And then it kind of automatically took its rightful place, which is just forget about it and just talk to people, just be in your own correctness. And then the right people come up. And or they'll recommend somebody, or somebody will bring a friend and say, or call and say, can you get this person a reading, or can you check their chart? And then I would talk about it and get right into it, deep as they want. But no, I stopped talking to people about it. Even my kids, it's just like they all know what they have to know, and that's it. Well, for them, it's not that I don't have to talk because it's in the aura. So, they pick up stuff without having to really give lectures on it. Now I understand, it's not proper to go pushing this stuff. Mm-hmm. It's proper when the stuff makes it all come together, right? Because I'm not in control of that. And when you're operating in a grounded way, all that just happens. Right people show up, right people want to know. And the people that come are really actually interested, they're passionate about it and they're blown away and changes their life right away. Yeah. It's not like you have to keep calling, hey, how's it going? Did you read that book? And did you get that? There's no follow-ups necessary, right? It's just all just rolls effortless.
Yes.
So I like that. Once I sort of got that and let it sort of happen, it's like, hey, this is how it should be. That's not my business. That person's not business. So, it's a lot about, being a projector, and especially fifth line. A lot of this is about just watching. Well, what you'll see is a bunch of train wrecks about to happen always, right? But you can't do anything about it. You're just sitting there watching. Well, okay, train wrecks have to happen. Yeah. And sometimes if they ask, you can say something. If they don't, you just have to sit and shake your head and say, "Oh, there it happened." I mean, it's just so normal now. It's so normal. It doesn't even sort of stand out. But that's really a lot of what we have to do once you're not, out there forcing anything or trying to make something happen or trying to push human design. You just sit back and, all you can do is just sit and watch and see what's happening. And you see all of these mechanics in play. And it's like a theater, right? It's like 360-degree theater. You just theater all around. There's nothing you can do other than watch. And sometimes they'll come and talk to you and you talk back. Rest of the time, you just watch. You hardly need movies.
Right? Truly. Truly.
Especially these days.
Yeah. But I mean, it takes longer. It takes months, weeks, months, years for these outside things to happen that you're watching, the mechanics. Some are train wrecks. Not all of them are. Some are good things. So you see all of these sort of, as a projector, you see these things happening or unfolding, and you kind of see the end results, and you can help them, but you can't. And I think that's the correct way to go. We just have to sit and watch, and you get used to it. But that was one of the hardest things for me to get used to watch what bad is going to happen to somebody and not say anything.
Yes.
Man, that was tough. Yeah. Super tough. At least I would like a hint something or drop a little hint here, tell a story that would relate to what, they're about to hit. At the end, you realize you just can't do any of that.
Yeah. I think sometimes as a projector and also as a fifth line, at least in my experience, and fifth color, which I share with you, that I guess I would describe it as, I used to feel like if I was aware of something that I was responsible for it, or I was responsible for doing something about it. That experience for me feels a little bit like what you're describing. And then it was such a shift and a liberation, and still is, when I can notice, I'm seeing this, and I can see what's coming, and I can see what could be done about it. And yet, if there's no entry point for me, there's really nothing to do, but watch.
Yeah, and a lot of the times it's for their own benefit, the fact that you're not jumping in. Yes. So what I see is, they go through their process, however it turns out, good or bad, and they end up putting a Band-Aid on the bruise, and you get up and they go, oh, you know what, I'm not going to do that again. Or so they come to their own little realizations and move on.
Yeah.
So, what to do? It's just, but it's one of the deepest conditioning factors, though, that this idea of trying to save people, help people.
Yes.
And with the Buddhist background, for me, it was like, to me, that was normal to help, and to think of like, wow, I should just sit here and not do anything. Not that I didn't try in the early years, right? You try and you see like nobody pays attention, they don't care, even if it happens. So it's like, okay, I'll just watch. And well, it's not even that. Now it's more of, it's just how life is.
I guess being more evangelical about human design, or something you find early on, and then kind of realizing that's not really the way it works, or it's not really helping the person, or that's not the correct role, or anything like that. It reminds me a bit of introducing someone to, say, plant medicine, for example, pushing that in any way, knowing that it may result in their life turning upside down or falling apart, or a train wreck of sorts. And if the person is not coming to that on their own, or asking for it, or it's not the right time for them, then it almost seems like a disservice, or it's it's just not right, and it probably won't even really work the way like you had described, where everything just kind of clicks into place and flows, and it's easy, and there's no effort.
Exactly. I think that's exactly how it is. Mm-hmm. And it's the natural way.
Yeah.
And I think we're just in a habit of trying to manipulate everything, or conditioned to do so, and getting our hands off of the knobs, and just letting the thing go. Mm-hmm. Unless you're invited into that, asked. Well, yeah, then you do what you can, and everything works better, obviously, right? All the projecting channels, everything works better, and the right information comes out. So there's a lot of background other than, oh, I'm just watching, or not wanting to help just because when it's correct, it's actually correct at a very deep level. Even the information is different. And so, yeah, it's another one of those goodies.
I love what comes through your frequency. It's been really cool to sit here with you, and just the way you've been talking about the magic and the trust and this, I can really feel it coming through you, this sense that there really isn't that much for us to do. And when there is, if we're paying attention, we'll know, and it'll just happen, that we can trust in the timing, we can trust in the right players, we can relax, listen to our bodies, laugh a little bit, take it easy, and, it might all be okay. And in the meantime, watch everything that's happening and be amused or amazed by it. I can feel that coming through you. It's a really cool frequency to get to experience.
Oh, thanks. It's been good. It's good. It's been good talking to you guys too. Yeah. And about this doing, what did you say? Oh, about this not doing. Mm-hmm. It's hard to know someone's internal process. There are lots of, there's all kinds of variety of people out there. So I'm not sure if that's their proper place. I don't think there is a proper place that we can define, so to speak, because, who knows? Variety is too big. There's too much variability. So, and who knows what the future brings in another 10 years? We don't know what the process will take. So I'm looking forward to see that, to not make it that some kind of an end goal. That's another thing. Like, that's not something I thought about. And it's not about me. I think it's generally for everyone. It's not something, when you enter the experiment, you can't have a predefined goal of what you're expecting out of the experiment. Because that's why it's an experiment. Right? You're trying to see where it will take you.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we have this predefined ideas, my gate is this or my cross is that, so I better, embody that. And how can I embody it? And a lot of these new people come in and, they totally identify with the gate or a channel or cross. And then, my so-and-so did that. And this gate wanted to do that. And I'm not sure if that's the healthy narrative, because where is that going to take you? Because you're more and more identifying with the gates and the lines and the channels and the crosses. And there's nobody there to peel you away from that. And I somehow never got into that identification with the chart, other than to know, hey, what's the deal here? What are the mechanics here? And I never got into personalizing it or personally identifying with it. What I identified was with the mechanics of the chart, not the characteristics. And I'm just thinking this now, actually, while I'm talking. That's probably why I never, because when I hear people saying, my this and my gate, and they give a reason from the chart to their behavior or their characteristic or how they came to some conclusion or some idea. And I can never identify with that, or I can resonate with it. I'm like, wow, how come I don't do that? But I never thought much into that. But now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking that's probably not a good idea, just in the long run. If you start identifying with all the parts, characteristics, how the heck are you going to ever leave it all behind to where life takes you? Mm-hmm. Because that's just a static shot of the mechanics. It's not your potential.
Yes.
Right? So we have people sort of embracing gene keys, because that's the sort of the higher end of things in terms of defining some of these characteristics. Then we have people embracing the other side and this side. The thing is to just look at the mechanics and just leave it alone and focus on your process, see where the mechanics will take you. So that's the mechanical side that's going to carry you. Mm-hmm. And if you start identifying with the car, you're going to miss where where you're going to be and who you're meeting. And I think it's a big issue. I think it's a weakness, and I think that should be corrected, or somebody should be lecturing about it.
Yeah, it's such a great point that you're making, and it's been kind of incredible to me to see just how much information people are absorbing from the very beginning as soon as they come in contact with human design, and kind of doing exactly what you're talking about. I feel like when I first got into it, I don't know if I think there wasn't as much access to as much information, but I was also not inclined to, or had the space and time to really dive into it that way. So I feel like all I had was the kind of the simple basics. like the mechanics that you're talking about. And now looking back, I'm kind of grateful. If I had been in a different time or space in my life, I think it could have been a much more mental, detailed process or attempt to match myself to the map. And I agree. I think it's one of the biggest pitfalls in a way, or things that can really interfere with the magic.
Exactly. And it's like what they used to say, what they say, like the golden handcuffs. Yeah, it's golden, but it'll cuff you into one place. And how are you going to move out of that? And a lot of people coming into human design from astrology, they have an astrology background, or they know their charts. So astrology, there's a lot of identification, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm Taurus, I'm this, my degree's that, my ascendant's that. So a lot of this me. So if you carry that to, I can see easily, you get into human design, it's like, oh, this is me. So that identification just continues to stay there. At some point, that has to sort of decouple, I think. I think that should be part of the courses or, people lectures. And it needs to be out a topic that's out, I think. And people should talk about it, because nobody really brings it up, because you don't want to hurt the other person. It's very difficult to bring it up and say, hey, we shouldn't be talking like that, And you just can't bring it up in a casual conversation. So if there was some official conversation about it, it'd probably be healthier, and it'll probably cut down the time they spend in this sort of the runaway area of the experiment, being identified with these things. Because, once your mind believes something, you have a belief system, you only see things that fit the belief.
Yes.
So if you think, oh, I'm gate 23 and I'm supposed to see these things, well, guess what? You're not going to see anything else.
Yeah.
You're just going to see those things. Your brain automatically fixes the filters, and boom, that's what you're seeing. You're missing everything. So goes back to when you let it all go and just sit there and watch it. Rod talks about seeing, and you're not looking, right? So if you're identifying, you're always looking, right? Identification leads to actually looking for that. Otherwise, you would need to identify. So if you don't identify, well, then you can slowly go into seeing, which is far greater than that narrow little identification or definition you labeled yourself with.
Yes.
And boy, I see this, like on Facebook, right? We see all the time, and it's so innocent. You don't want to get in there, and plus it's not my job, but you don't want to get in there and say anything, but nobody else does either, and it just continues. And I'm thinking, wow, look at these. It's like ships crossing in the dark. They're so close to like sort of getting it, but then there's one little hook over here just holding them to their identification with this or that, or the cross or the line or the color, and that could spin you around, keep you there for years and not know that. There's a lot of little thorns like that in human design, where if you're really not watching, you get hooked into that, and you might never know, right?
Yeah.
Because the conditioning forces are strong, and they're not working for you. So.
Yes, and the natural mental manipulation that can come up for all of us is
the whole thing, right?
Really strong. Yeah, really strong. I can understand why Ross said, things like don't look at your cross for 7 years. Like, don't even look at it. Don't go there. It's going to happen if you just relax into the mechanics and be in the process of being, aware moment by moment in your own lived life. It's all going to happen. So, well,
that's the ride, right? The ride is that discovery of that self.
Yeah.
So if you're already labeling yourself, how the hell are you going to discover anything?
Yeah.
You already think you have it, right? And you don't.
Yes.
So it's a difficult thing. And so there is not funny, right? That's serious.
Very serious. It actually is funny, because I'm going to do the thing we're not to do right now, and I'm going to say that what's coming through right now with my open head and ajna from 24323 fifth line profiles is a heretical view. I think that what you are both speaking to is this frequency or resonance of individual knowing that goes beyond the mind identifications and then becomes more of an experience, I guess. I think with each of your definitions, there's this kind of sense of like, do I just resonate with, or is it the truth or not? There's something to that 4323 that I think,
of course, it's the truth.
that just brings it right through in this kind of, again, heretical way, and it's based on that seeing and that looking, like you guys are saying. So anyway, I'm just having fun watching y'all go back and forth on it.
Yeah, but but these things are easy to decipher. You can just dissect it and see, well, can it be true?
Yeah.
From everything we already know. So we know that it's impossible to be identified at the same time trying to be liberated in some way. So you can't drag all those anchors, and unless you cut those ties, labels, and identifications, how are you going to move? Especially being a passenger, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're being carried around. The whole point there was about especially new people, but I see a lot of people identifying with the gates and channels, which you can. It's not a hard thing to do, obviously, because that's in your definition, right? But it's not you. Anyway, I don't know how that came up, but I think it's something that's happening. I don't think it's a good idea, a good thing that's happening, and I think it's a good thing to address and talk about and get it out in the open. So we don't have a whole lot of people sort of nailed down to these old tricks of the mind, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I really appreciate you saying it. I think it is really important and helpful, and it also speaks to that sense of kind of being. I remember being in my early 20s and in Hawaii, and I went on some kind of pilgrimage to find this Buddhist monastery, and I found it, and I walked in, and at that age, I didn't have a whole lot of awareness about what kind of state I was in, but I walked into this temple, and this monk walks in, he looks at me, and he was like, I said, is it okay for me to be here? And he said, yeah, it's fine. And then he started to walk away, and then he looked at me, he's like, just try to relax, okay? We didn't have any exchange at all. It was literally, 30 seconds of him being in my aura, and he's like, just try to calm down, okay? And I think sometimes that's the way it is with stuff like this. It's like, actually, like, we could let go of the grip about like 99%, and it's all going to be okay.
Yeah. Again, that's one of those things you don't have to pressure yourself to do, right? You don't have to throttle it. It just happens. Sometimes you have to, do certain things that might appear to be not self or whatever, but that's part of life too. So it's not like you live some life of purity. You live your life. And on the average, you want to get on that moving average. That's correct, right? You want to move along that, on the average, the correct path. But yeah, we're going to go up and down and do this and that and get into all kinds of crazy. But again, you correct yourself naturally and you come back to the median line.
Really cool. Well, thank you. Thanks so much for talking with us. It's really,
thank you.
really cool to get to hear your voice and feel your frequency after getting to enjoy what you create out there and seeing how much people enjoy it. I'm glad people will get to. We know several people too who are very excited to get to hear you speak. So, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you, and we can do it again.
We'd love to.
We'd love that. Yes, for sure.
Well, until next time then.
All right. You guys have a good weekend.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Human Design Collective podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please review us and share. For more information about us and to connect with others on this experimental journey, please visit us at humandesigncollective.com. You can also learn more by exploring our course and workshop offerings at courses.humandesigncollective.com. Music for the Human Design Collective podcast, courtesy of Role Model. For more information, see the show notes. And please stay tuned for more upcoming episodes on the same channel.